All right. So I've got a confession basically to make. I essentially have a new mistress. Yes, for sound. So Alicia Shepherd very kindly offered to help me not just with the mic but with some other stuff I'm working on. So and she sent me a little clip of a piece of music, what the original sounds like, and then what it sounds like after she, and I quote, mistressed, what after she did her mistressing to it, and it's awesome. So I don't know what Alicia looks like, but the cover, the thumbnail, that's kind of what I imagine her to look like, because she does all this techie stuff with sound and stuff. It's awesome, and she has sorted out uh, my sound issues, and in fact I still have to apply about half of what she's told me to do. So I've only just done the bare minimum, and it's much improved. But one of these days soon, maybe over the weekend, I'll implement the other stuff she told me, and hopefully that'll make it even better. You'll notice also that being that she's my mistress for sound, she wants to see my whole sexy body, so I've got rid of the big thing. But yeah, I haven't. I'll have to just break the news gently to my wife, but I'm sure she'll be okay. She's a very understanding woman. Although she did say at dinner, does the Kurganess have to come on there and just warn the bitches off? So anyway, thank you very much. It's very, very, very nice offer. And she also writes poetry. I don't know what she does really, but she's definitely really good with sound. So Alicia, if you want me to do shout out for anything, if you've got links to she's done an album which I've got a copy of. I haven't heard it yet. So yeah, just let me know. I'll gladly whore it out to the world. Now that little bit of news is out the way, the other things I wanted to quickly discuss is one of the commenters, a guy called Ben Evans. He put a comment which I'm just gonna read off, and I wanted to make a comment on it. He wrote, some Vedic philosophers, Yogananda, referred to Christ consciousness as an attainable state. Do you think this is another example of Satan tempting people to believe that they can be their own God? Disclaimer, I'm a Christian, non-denominational, although you're making some persuasive arguments, haha. Not a Vedic philosopher. I'm just trying to figure out which belief systems are intentionally subversive of dangers and which ones have their motivations in a positive but misguided place. I'm interested in your opinion on this kind of topic, as I have an irritating tendency to give too much leeway, and, as far as I can tell, you don't. Well, let's start from the end rather than the beginning. With regard to giving too much leeway, I'm guilty of that myself. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, what? This is the guy who Vox says if he had a crowdfunding thing, he'd be like, and for the stretch goal, we can get 2 nuclear devices. And Vox is right. I am pretty clear in my aims and thinking and way of going about stuff. That said, I have got a quality that is both a virtue and sometimes really a sin, or I don't know. I'm curious. I'm a really curious guy. And I'm not scared of very much. I'm pretty relatively fearless, quite frankly. Now, I'm also intelligent, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm wise. And I'm intelligent enough to very often know that my curiosity is sending me down a really bad road. But I'm not scared enough to let it stop me most of the time. As you get older, you get a little bit wiser, but not that much in my case. So I have given lots of leeways. I'll give you a little example. Dianetics. Now, for those of you who don't know what Dianetics is, Dianetics was invented by L. Ron Hubbard, who essentially took a lot of the stuff from Crowley. Crowley was an absolute Satanist. There's literally like sex magic involved, where they used the blood from menstruation of women, semen, all sorts of really disgusting, gross stuff. You know, kind of stuff that Hillary Clinton gets up to, allegedly. I have to say allegedly, although I fully believe she's into eating babies. That's my opinion. I believe it. I absolutely believe that. Anyway, L. Ron Hubbard essentially invented this so-called religion called Dianetics. And what they actually do in this religion is a mild form of hypnosis. Now, whether it's because of my slight Asperger's, high IQ, whatever, I'm actually immune to hypnosis. There is, and I want to explain that a little bit, because I'm a trained hypnotist. I'm actually a very good hypnotist. I've worked with some guys that are sort of world-class people. I got trained by a guy who's probably the best teacher of hypnosis in the world, bar none. He doesn't teach anymore. And then I've met some really odd characters that are also very good hypnotists. I have also read just about everything that Milton Erickson ever wrote. I literally spent about 6 months reading everything that the guy wrote for 8 hours a day, and internalizing and assimilating that. So, but I hadn't done any of this when I came across the Dianetics guys. And I'd come across a hypnotist before that who tried to hypnotize me, and he failed. Now, the reason that they failed to hypnotize me is because everybody can be hypnotized, but not every hypnotist can hypnotize everybody. I have yet to fail to hypnotize somebody when it comes to things like wanting to give up smoking. I've literally got 100% effectiveness in that. A couple of people, I think 1 or 2 people, I did the hypnosis on them. They stopped smoking for like 3 months, and then they decided to start again. But then it was their choice. You know, the hypnosis had worked. They then decided, no, I'm going to smoke again. And they said so themselves. You know, they said, no, it's not that your hypnosis in any way failed. I literally didn't smoke for 3 months, and then I made the decision to smoke. So, and now they're happy to be smokers. But I had a lady, for example, that she had been to hypnotists like 12 times, and nothing had worked. She'd been a smoker for like 15 years. She didn't believe at all that I could hypnotize her. And in 45 minutes, I did a session. She didn't touch a cigarette for 3 months. And then before she did smoke one, she called me up and she said, listen, I just want to tell you, I've decided I'm going to smoke again. And I don't want you to think it had anything to do with your hypnosis, because it obviously worked. I'm just going to do it because I like doing it. And I've decided I don't care about the health impacts. And, and I was like, hey, you don't have to justify yourself to me. It's like, but she's actually a good friend. So, that was one. And another guy, similar situation. He didn't smoke for 4 or 5 months, and then he took it up again to a reduced rate, but again, it was his choice. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you this, again, it's not to boast about my skills as a hypnotist or anything like that. It's because to let you know that I understand the concept. Now, the reason that the guy who tried to hypnotize me, and this was at a gathering where he did a show, and then later, he came to talk to me and he tried to hypnotize me. I've had, and apparently I found out later by other people that knew him, that he was gay, and that he quite often tried to hypnotize men that he found attractive or whatever. And it had absolutely zero impact on me. But that's because I also am, if you've ever seen the program called Lie to Me with Tim Roth, it's a TV version of things. But right in the pilot series, where he finds this girl who works as a TSA agent who's a natural, what they call a natural, a person that can spot lies instinctively. And they don't even know how they're doing it, from micro cues and so on. Well, I'm one of those. I've got that ability. I've always had that ability since I'm a kid. And sometimes, the only times that I sort of let people get away with lying to me is if I essentially let them get away with it, or make excuses for them, or I'm not paying attention, or I don't care. Sometimes I know somebody's lying to me, but I know the parameters of the lie and I don't give a shit. Other times, the person that's lying to me doesn't even realize they're lying to me, but I know they're lying to me. They're lying to themselves first so that they can lie to me. And anyway, because of that, I can pick up on duplicity. And I have an instinctive sense which has never once failed me. I have failed my instinct because I unfortunately sometimes don't listen to it because I'm curious or I get caught up emotionally or whatever. If you're a very attractive woman with a slightly mochaccino complexion, you might get away with talking some bullshit to me. Not that I don't know you're talking bullshit, but there might be other things that get in the way of that. Not now that I'm married, because I am married and I am Catholic. I wouldn't cheat on my wife, but I have certainly made mistakes in the past, knowing there were mistakes, really. Anyway, to get back to the point, the thing is, the guy didn't manage to hypnotize me. And similarly, when these Dianetics guys came along, and I'd read the book Dianetics and it sounded interesting, and I thought, well, let's go check these guys out. And that's really how I developed this little hobby of then going to check out cults and just see what they could do. And I went to these guys and they did the whole hypnosis thing, and it kind of worked, because the guy doing the hypnosis to me, he didn't know, and I recognize that with hindsight. I didn't know any of this at the time, but he didn't know he was doing hypnosis. He was following a script, and he believed the script. So there was no bad intention from his side, which meant that he could hypnotize me because he didn't have an evil intent. He genuinely thought he was doing good at me. So my instinctive paranoia didn't kick in, because okay, this guy's not trying any funny shit. And I did have some experiences and whatever of hypnosis, but I just have, I don't know, some kind of survival instinct or whatever. I don't know what it comes from. Maybe it's 800 years of being warriors or whatever that, I don't know. But despite the fact that they did manage to hypnotize me, it didn't affect me in any real way, shape, or form. And I kept digging at them. I kept asking them stuff. I kept saying, okay, what about this? What about that? What about this? To the point where they flew down from Johannesburg to Cape Town, a man and a woman, because they usually send them in pairs. So if one guy, if the man maybe can't do it and the woman tries it to try and attract you or whatever, and they kind of do this team up, to try and convince me to join their org. Now, for those of you that don't know, if you join the Dianetics org, you sign up for 1 billion years, because they believe in reincarnation, to, serve. And basically all your property, all your money, everything you own becomes part of the org, and you work for the greater good of the org. And it's modeled on some weird Navy kind of stuff. But apparently in these organizations, a lot of abuse goes on. A lady died. There's people that have come out of there that have, broken the lid open on it. And Scientology is a cult. And yeah, I don't give a shit. I know that Scientologists will hack you, will go after you, blah, blah, blah. I got rid of these guys 25 years ago, and I can do it again. I don't care. But, so they didn't manage. They sent out this man and this woman that they spent literally 10 hours straight trying to convince me. It was 4 a.m. by the time I finished. And I was just going along for the ride because I am curious. And I was like, all right, let's just see how far these guys go. And I would just string them along, and they'd come along, and then they were like, yeah, what about this? And joining that, joining the other. I'm saying, so just explain to me, what are the rules? So I have to give up every single thing I own, any money I have, any property I have just becomes part of the org. And they were like, and then I just looked at them and I burst out laughing. This had been going on, like I said, for about 10 hours straight. And it was about 4 a.m. And I'd warned them out, because that's another thing about the Kurgan. I have yet to meet another human being that, when I put my mind to it, can keep up with me. I can go days without sleep. I can go days with non-stop walking. I can go days without food. I can go days without water. If I get something in my head, I have yet to meet another human being that can keep up with me. And I'm 50 now, so I'm sure there's some really fit guys that can do it, but I wouldn't bet on it right away anyway. So I warned them down to the point where they're kind of nodding off. And I said, so let me just recap. So, if I joined you guys, I'd have to give you everything. And they were like, yeah, that's it, yeah. And I said, just why is that? Oh, because, it's for the org, it's for the good of humanity, blah, 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 blah. And I waited, and well, my comment on all that, and I burst out laughing. I laughed in their face. I said, that's just completely retarded. I would never do that. You'd have to be some kind of a moron. Why would you think I would ever do that? And they were just so stunned, because they thought 10 hours are going to wear them down. And it was like they had nothing left to say. I said, well, are you all done now? Got anything else to say? And they literally had nothing else to say. I said, well, in that case, I'll go home. You have a good flight back. And I went home. It was, it was funny. But my point in all this is, there are people that truly believe in Dianetics. There are some Scientologists that think they're doing good. It is hypnosis. It is a kind of brainwashing. And there's plenty of the stuff around, and they engage you. It's for groups, it's called LGAT, Large Awareness Group Training. It's what people like Tony Robbins do. And I've been to Tony Robbins seminars, don't get me wrong. I've been to Tony Robbins stuff. I've been to like Amma the Hugging Saint, who's apparently a real pervert, and there's some serious shit going on in her stuff. I actually dated a girl that ended up, going off into her ashram or whatever. And I don't know, she's probably still there if she's not being eaten or whatever the fuck. There's some really weird shit going on there. Really pretty girl too. Broken brain though. But anyway. So, yes, when it comes to Vedic, Yoganda, yoga, all that shit, I also had a friend who is a stripper, and she also is a really good yogi. She taught yoga as well when she stopped stripping. And yoga is powerful. It engages your whole body. It does open up certain energetic pathways and so on. And if you get caught up in the philosophy of it, in the ideology of it, in the woo-woo of it, then yeah, it can be dangerous like any other stuff. But I've got a slightly different take. There are Christians, especially the Protestants, my nemesis. Protestants are blinkered moron who can only think in black and white, and who can only think in, oh, this is good, this is bad. Yeah, no, anything that is a bit out of it's bad. Don't get me wrong. Fucking around with auras and spirit guides and, Ouija board, all that, it's dangerous shit, all right? I can tell you fucking a lot of stories about that, but it would really take hours. So let me just say a couple of things. I did start to see auras spontaneously. I didn't look for it when I was about 26. I was training hard every day. I went to this talk, and there was a lady there, like a medium. And I didn't believe any of this shit. I was about the most skeptical guy, but I'm objective. And I was sitting at the back, just finished like a hardcore training class. I can't remember if I was already a black belt or not, but it was like, when you're physically done, but mentally I was fresh. And sitting at the back, and I saw this lady talking, and I saw these three like shapes, like humanoid shapes, like standing behind her. They were glowing. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Is my contact lens dirty? What the hell? I'm losing my shit? Is it the lights? But no, there was these three, And I thought, wow, that's weird. And then some other speakers came on, two ladies. And they didn't have any human shape standing behind them. But what I did see was like a triangle, like from the top of their head, just like a little triangle, like a little hat sort of going off like that. And it was like vibrating. Both of them had it. And I thought, what the fuck is wrong with me, man? It's like something weird's going on here. So at the end of the talk, I went to speak to the medium. And I didn't know this, but her husband was sitting there. Her husband was there, and he was sitting sort of in the front row, but I didn't know it was her husband. I didn't know this lady from Bar Soap. So I went up to her, and I asked her, I said, listen, I know this is going to sound weird, but was there somebody standing behind you while you were speaking? Which is an absurd question, right? She was alone on the stage. And completely unfazed, this lady, and she was in her 60s, early 60s, she looked at me and goes, oh, I don't know, because I was just talking to the crowd, but yeah, there was, probably my spirit guides. I usually have my spirit guides when I talk, because otherwise I don't know what the hell I'm saying. They help me. And I swear to you, in that moment, when she said that, I promise you, okay, on my life, that in my head, I thought, look at these goddamn crystal chewing fucking hippies. They will say any goddamn shit just to make you believe that they've got these woo-woo powers. What a load of fucking shit. Fucking spirit guides. I'd seen this with my own eyes, right? And she told me that, and I was like, I promise you, in my head, that's what was going on in my head. I was like, fucking lying hippies that will say any goddamn thing. And her husband, that was sitting down there, looked at me and he goes, oh, yes, that's interesting. But did you notice that when the other two ladies came on, they had like a little hat, inverted triangle hat on top of their heads? And at that point, I was like, fuck, I didn't say a thing about that. So maybe I'm not imagining it, you know? Then I went to see this lady, and she did a reading, which was an amazing experience. I could go on an hour just on that. But anyway, one of the things that she told me is that I would be living in London on the River Thames, and I was just like, lady, you haven't got a fucking clue. But she said a whole bunch of other stuff, which I'd forgotten about until I got home, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's what she meant. You know, she told me about my grandfather, she told me about my brother, and I was like, God, she's wrong. And then I got home, and I was like, oh, fuck, she's talking about my stepbrother, not my brother. You know, it's, you know, it's just shit that I can't explain, right? And I tried, I mean, but one of the questions, I had another guy also ask one of the questions about reincarnation or something, I can't remember. And there is a thread, remember, I have big loops, so just try and keep it all in your head if you can. So my take on the stuff is, yes, it can be dangerous. Yes, it can sway you. Yes, there are entities that are not your friend at all in that realm, and they can affect you. All that said, I'm a curious guy, and I'm not scared. And there are, I think, also certain positive elements to it. Now, the problem with it is it's very, very tough not to get caught up in it. I mean, I was literally seeing auras and these spirit beings or whatever they are behind people. I had like weird experiences. I could tell what people were thinking. And it becomes very, very distracting. It becomes really difficult to live in the world when you can do this stuff because it's so weird. You know, you're like literally, I would go to a restaurant. I'd be sitting at a restaurant having dinner with my friend. The waiters would come up to serve us, and I'd know she's just broken up with a boyfriend, and and the guy's like, you know, I even know what he looks like. I've never seen this girl before. And I had enough of these experiences that I checked on them sometimes, you know, and I was like, you know, I mean, it's kind of really odd shit, right? How do you tell a complete stranger, oh, don't worry about your boyfriend, he's an asshole, and, you know, you're going to find a better guy. And by the way, he's like 6'1", blonde hair, blue eyes. He's really good looking, but he is an asshole, so just move on, don't worry about it. And the woman just looks at me and goes like, who the fuck are you? Do you know me? And I'm like, no, but this is going to sound really strange, but I can see what's going on in your head, and, you know. And she's like, what? But you're not a friend? I'm like, no, I don't know you, lady. I don't know your name. You know, I've never met you. You just served me some food at a dinner table. That's all. And it happened enough times that, you know, call it what you like, but telepathy is definitely a thing. It exists. You do have to be in a certain frequency for it to work. And if, again, don't take my word for it. There's a guy called Michael Persinger who did a 2-hour video on YouTube. It should still be on YouTube, called No More Secrets. Michael Persinger is a professor in Canada, I think, and he did a video called No More Secrets, and he explains how he thinks telepathy works, and it's the best scientific explanation I've ever heard. So I think he's onto something. Anyway, I've had those experiences. I've had other experiences that are so crazy that, you know, I've told you guys about the UFO thing, and a lot of people thought I was insane just for saying that stuff. Well, I've had experiences with witnesses there that make the UFO experience look like a walk in the park, okay? And despite all of that, I was not a believer. I was agnostic. Because, yes, I've had experiences where I remember past lives, and not just remembered past lives, but I remember details of those lives to the point where I recognized people that I knew in this life that had been in that life. And usually what happened is one of us would recognize the other one first, and it was usually me. I would usually recognize them, and then I'd tell them something, and that would spark off the whole memory of the other person. But the very first time it happened was the other way around. Somebody said something, and I was like, oh, that's weird that you said that, because it's almost as if you've been abandoned. And she said, yeah, but I've actually never been abandoned in my life. And that sentence just triggered a whole massive, huge, really traumatic memory, which took me years to process. It helped me a lot because it got rid of a lot of rage that I had, and it made me understand a whole bunch of stuff. But, for the next 10 years at least, I kept meeting people from that other life, and I could recognize them. And once I spoke to them, they recognized me. And then I also met somebody who recognized me before I recognized them and said, you were my leader. I was your soldier, and I followed you. We did everything. And it was just really strange. So I've had all those experiences, but even though, the easiest, simplest explanation for that is reincarnation. And it's not just people, because you could say, oh, you influence each other. There's some telepathy going on. There's some fucking subconscious telepathy where I want them to be the past life person, and they pick up on that, and somehow they reflect it back. You could come up with all sorts of theories. The problem is that I also received, from remembering, I also got physical information about objects, places, things, stuff that I didn't know, I had never come across. And then I physically went, to another continent to check this shit out, and it was exactly like I remembered. So I don't know how to explain that stuff other than reincarnation. So, but Catholicism, Christianity rejects reincarnation, although there's quite a bit of evidence in the Bible, in my opinion, if you read things in a certain way, that reincarnation is a thing. Transmigration of the soul is a thing in Judaic thought, in the original Judaic thought. The Talmudic Jews, I don't care anything that they say. And there is quite a bit of evidence, if you read into the stuff, about people that have remembered other lives, kids that have remembered other families, and the families tend up to be there, and so on. So, but you can always come up with different explanations. You could come up, the classical Christian explanation is that demons are fooling you. I've believed that I have encountered demonic beings, and there's a whole different quality to them. So while I'm not saying that's not possible, because I think they definitely do affect you, I also think I'm relatively immune to that sort of manipulation of the mind, because demonic sort of presences are more effective on people that have a weak mind. Now, I've never had a weak mind in any way, shape, or form. I would say my mind is probably the strongest part of me. My intention, my not stopping, not giving up, not knowing how to stop even. And it's been a problem sometimes. It's not always a good thing, but I've had experiences where these so-called demonic forces or beings or whatever you want to call them, they were definitely doing stuff. They were there. I could sort of see them when I could see all these auras and stuff. And it was just like, yeah, fuck off. Just go away, because I'm bigger than you. I'm powerfuler than you. And, you're not even physical, And I could literally burn these things out just by sitting there and thinking, fuck off, I had some really strange experiences. I'm not going to go into that because I can't prove them. It sounds crazy. And if anybody had told me this stuff, when I didn't know anything about it, I would just think they're completely insane liars. I would think they're drug-using fucking alcoholics or hallucination idiots. Very much like after having done, something like 20 years of hardcore karate, when I came across the Russian guys and what they can do, I would have not believed it, if they hadn't done it to me. If I hadn't get, Vladimir once, he's just talking and he says, the thing about, he's trying to explain how in Sistema you can stop a guy without having to destroy him. If you're at his level, if you're at my level, maybe you destroyed him and whatever. But, and he says, because look, And as he's talking, we're standing next to each other. You know, there's a little semicircle of people. And he just literally lifted his hand and just, it looked like this movement. That's it. But he did it on my leg. Well, it made me flip horizontal and I landed flat on my back. But it was, as soon as I landed, it goes, how are you feeling? I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I didn't get hurt. I don't know how the hell he did it. He just tapped my leg and I just jumped. Like, you know, I've been hit, broken nose, broken lips, broken bones, and not fallen over. I don't know what the fuck he did. I can't explain it. Still can't explain it. But, you know, he did it. It worked. It was me. I fell flat on my ass. So, you know, it's real. But if you told me that somebody could do that to me, I would have said, yeah, piss off, you know, until it happened. So there are things, like Shakespeare said, that are well outside of our philosophy. And we can't explain everything, for not even close. So having said all that, if you are a suggestible person, if you are not a really strong-minded, and I don't know how to explain that really, because it's not even hardcore willpower. You can have a lot of willpower and be deceived very quickly. It's really something to do with faith, although you can have it even when I didn't believe in God, in the Christian God. I was just, you know, there's probably an intelligence, a power, or some kind of a thing, but I didn't have a specific personal God that I believed in. And yet I've always had, I think my brother put it best once. We're talking on the phone, and I can't remember. I said something like, you know, something about courage and faith. And he goes, but you've always had absolute faith. You know, you're completely fatalistic, and I was like, well, what do you mean? Because I thought he meant like I was nihilistic in my fatalism. And he goes, no, all you have is faith. It's like, I don't even know how you do it. You know, it's like an endless sort of belief that you're going down the right road, or that you're doing the right thing, or that you can, or, you know, something like that. And he wasn't talking about arrogance or willpower. And I realized he was right. I don't know where it came from, but I've always had it inside me. Now, that's what I mean by strong mind. If you have that, and if you're aware that you have that, then you're pretty secure. You know, you'll still get oppressed, but you kind of have a shield. You know, so like these demonic forces, they just have to pile up on the shield, and eventually they get tired. And the more you're aware of it, and the more you're aware of them, and the more you're like, yeah, come, I'm going to give you a fight. I will bring more light. The more shit you try and give me, I will spread the word. The more you try and suppress me, the more I'm going to convert people. The more you try and hold me down, the more I'm going to do. And when I'm down and beaten, and you try and cut me more, and you hurt me with the things that can hurt me, I'm going to do more. So every time you do that, I'm going to do more. So after that, they start to fucking leave you alone, because like, shit, this guy doesn't quit. And the more we try and fuck him up, the more he creates more light, you know. So you just have to keep at it, sort of thing. But yeah, so you can go down the wrong route. But in that book, Systema, you know, I can show out of 100 people, about 98, 95, 97 of them will be able to see auras. I can, in 5 to 10 minutes, I can teach anybody to see auras. But then you mustn't get stuck on it. And, you know, those 3, 4, 5 people, it was really funny, because, by the way, this aura stuff and that's part of the Russian training originally. Originally it was part of the Russian training. Now it's become commercialized, you know, and as usual degraded. But I taught the whole class to do it once, and every single person in it could see it, except this one guy who's a hardcore Orthodox. He was like, no, that stuff is witchcraft. Witchcraft, Giuseppe. I'm not doing it. It's just wrong, evil witchcraft. And he couldn't see auras. You know, maybe it's a relationship. But, you know, I'm not saying you should dabble with that shit. Don't. You know, people like me are unusual, and we might end up going badly wrong, you know. So don't. You hold to the, look, if you get the Catechism of Trent, and you get the canon law of 1917, and you stick to those rules, you're not going to go wrong. You're not going to go wrong. Okay? You're going to have a good life, and you're going to be good to the people around you. So stick to that. Anything diverging from that, you risk danger. You are in danger. You start to, you know, go off the beaten path. Now, some people probably have to go a little bit off the beaten path, like the Crusader guys. You think that they didn't do anything wrong? I mean, they killed, and killing is always wrong. Okay, they repented. Okay, they confessed. Okay, they did their mea culpas, and yet somebody had to do it, otherwise we wouldn't have christened them. So I would advise you to be very, very careful with that stuff if you're ever going to touch it. And if you are going to do physical things like yoga and so on, don't get caught up in the woo-woo, Do the physical movement, do the body movement, feel the energy, use it. But be inside yourself, be yourself. And that's why I think Christianity, and especially Catholicism, true hardcore Catholicism, is really good for this. Because, that's what I was saying, these lukewarm Catholics, fuck them. Those fake Catholics, fuck them. And all the ones of you that are deceived and a little bit, I'm kind of saying fuck them to you too. Not in a bad way, understand, but you got to make a choice. Fucking choose a side. You can't be half-hearted. Just like you can't be half-hearted about your marriage. Oh, well, if it doesn't work out. Oh, well, if she becomes a slut. Oh, well, if he cheats on me. Oh, well, if he's a drunk. No. You pick the right person. You make sure before you get married that that's the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with no matter what. And then that's it. That's it. You're done. That's a commitment. That's a choice. And it's the same thing with Catholicism, with God. You believe in God, then believe in God. And if need be that you need to cut people down for 3 years while you stand on a wall defending it, then that's what you do. And if you are not that type and your thing is to become a martyr, then that's what you do. And sometimes we don't have a choice, and you get to be one or the other without having much say in it. But the commitment is important, and if you have that commitment, then you're safe. You will get slings and arrows, don't get me wrong. You might get killed by the whatever blue-haired feminazi people try and crush you or whatever, or statists or Freemasons, the really evil fucks who actually run things. They'll come after you, but spiritually you're gonna be safe. So don't get caught up in the woo-woo. Even with Christianity, when I first came across it, because there's a lot of bullshit, there's a lot of fake Christians, there's a lot of con men, a lot of con men. Any evangelical, any Protestant pastor, they're essentially con men. And I would say the vast majority of all priests of all denominations are con men. Now, you have to keep in mind that there is a difference with the original Catholic priests. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of rubbish ones. Even in the original Catholic Church, when it was a proper Catholic Church, there was plenty of wrong ones. There was plenty of orgiastic scumbags. Not as many pedophiles as we currently have in the Novus Ordo. It was never that bad. But there were pedophiles there too, I'm sure. But you have to understand that back then, those priests would be killed. A pedophile priest, even not that far back, even just 100 years ago, a priest that abused children that was discovered, he would be killed. And if he was lucky, he'd get to have a prayer before they strung him up or disappeared him, somewhere. And the good priests, the real priests of the Catholic Church, those guys are absolutely dedicated to God. They're flawed human beings. They make mistakes like everybody. But real priests like Don Bosco, if you read some of the histories of these guys, and I've got a really good book. I don't know if I have it here, but it's called something like Heroes and Saints or something like that. It's about heroic priests, basically, of the Catholic Church. People that would die rather than break the seal of confession, that sort of stuff. You got to be certain inside yourself before you can, walk your way through the valley of this shadowy shit, whether it's yoga, and everybody's trying to fucking sell you something. Everybody's trying to sell you something. One of the reasons that you can know that, Christianity is true is because what did Jesus get out of it? And people that say, the atheists that say, oh, he faked his own death. It was like he had some special drugs that would just numb him. So he was crucified, but he didn't really die. And what? For what? to get the money and the villas and the bitches. He didn't get any money, he didn't get any villas, and he didn't get any bitches. So, the fuck did he do it for? He was just a really hardcore masochist? Well, it's bullshit, right? That's kind of how you know that it's real, because there was no other reason other than the spiritual one for him to do what he did. And so I hope that answers your question, Ben Evans, and a few of the other guys that also were asking about that. There was another guy, can't remember his name, who asked the original question I mentioned on last video about, oh, well, what religion was Christ? And I said, well, that's kind of a dumb question. Interesting, but kind of dumb, because Christ is God. God doesn't have a religion. God kind of becomes the thing that makes the religion. He is the thing for which we have a religion. So he's not subject to his own rules. And then there was a follow-up to that where he said, well, but then, yeah, if that's it, then why do we even argue about the differences and blah, 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 which is, I've covered this before. Look at the Flame Wars video, I think 26 or whatever. Look at the one where I basically did a rant. I think in the title it says something like a rant about Owen's Christianity or something like that. It matters. It absolutely matters whether you're, Catholic, Orthodox, or whatever. It matters. So you gotta make a choice. Now, whether you've made the right choice or not, once you've made it, you made it, Like my friend Dave, right? Me and Dave have been having an ongoing little flame war because on reading God's Battalions, I became aware just of how betrayed the Catholic Crusaders were by the Orthodox guys. And he was like, no, that's not true. Now he's reading God's Battalions, and I think he's realized, oh, shit, I'm kind of right. And the way I'm looking at it, big picture, is like, look, there's no way you can deny that Catholicism is essentially Christianity. Look at a map. Look at maps at 180. Look at a map at 280, 300, 400. Look at the spread of Christianity. Look at where it started. Look at what type of Christianity it is. The Catholics did it all, pretty much. Astronomy, the invention of science, Newton. What do you think Newton was? All of these people are Catholic, okay? Catholicism is Christianity. And big picture scenario, they're the ones that created Christendom. They're the ones that created all the really good stuff about Christendom. They're the ones that prevented the Muslims from destroying Christendom. So look at their fruits, right? What are the fruits of the Orthodox Church? They kind of survived and stagnated. They didn't expand. The Catholics conquered and Christianized the whole of South America and most of Europe, almost pretty much all of Europe, and large swathes of Africa too, eventually. What the fuck did the Orthodox do? You got the Greek Orthodox and the Russian Orthodox. That's about it. Some Armenians that are like, I don't know, weird in between type stuff. A couple of Copts here and there. What did they do? How much did they spread the gospel? So again, I look at the fruit. Yes, it's true that if you don't know the history, you think that the Novus Ordo is the Catholic Church, and you say, oh, but they're abusing children by the millions. Yeah, they are, but they're not Catholic. They're Novus Ordo. They're not Catholic. And Novus Ordo is, it's the religion of the orcs. It's the new orcs, and that's what they do. But again, the great philosophers, the great thinkers, the people who essentially created Western civilization are, for the vast majority of cases, Catholics. Now, the last part. I just came across an article, which I'm going to put the link in the notes today, about how Stalin's daughter became Catholic. It's really interesting. I mean, that lady had a really tough life, and she didn't know the kind of monster her father was at first. Her mother died when she was 6 years old because she committed suicide because she was married to Stalin. And pretty much only after her father died did she really realize what kind of a monster he was. And it's really interesting because it says, people think he was a physical monster, but it's worse than that. He was a spiritual monster, an emotional monster, and that's more terrifying, and it is. And she had converted to Orthodoxy, and then, that didn't quite work out, whatever. Eventually, she found a Catholic priest that spent some time with her and gave her a crucifix, which she always had, and it was the same crucifix, apparently, that Buzz Aldrin apparently, supposedly, took to the moon. Interesting little tidbit there. But anyway, so this lady converted to Catholicism, and then she was taking the Mass daily, and it helped her. And I just think, and she said, I've done something that my father would have had me shot for. And Stalin actually loved his daughter. He doted on her. So, to me, maybe it's silly, but that kind of a thing sort of makes sense to me. It's sort of like the greatest evil, and somehow his daughter becomes Catholic. It's a little bit like we came up with this thing, my brother and I don't know if it's canon or whatever, but like how in is it Dagobah where Yoda lives, there's that like a cave where Luke goes in and he sees this hallucination of Darth Vader, the great evil, and then Yoda says something like, yeah, there's great evil on this planet, and that's kind of like why he has to be there to sort of balance it off. And we had a conversation about that, not because of Yoda Star Wars, but because we were talking about a situation I'm not going to go into details of, but where there was a really evil man, and this is a real story, it's a real thing, real evil man, wealthy, had a lot of money and stuff. And his gardener was a guy who literally could heal people's injuries with his hands. And he healed an injury on my hand in minutes, something that I'd had there for a year. And not even minutes, seconds. He literally just took my arm and said, "Yeah, take your shirt off." And he pulled something here and he stretched my hand, and poof, I'd bust my knuckles on a hitting something hard. Without going into too many details, and I had a bump on the knuckle that had been there for over a year. It was like essentially a contusion of the cartilage, and those things don't go away; they become scar tissue. And I had it for over a year. This guy took my jacket off, grabbed me under here, pulled something, grabbed my hand at the same time. I felt like a strong pull, and that's it. The bump that had been there for a year, which is cartilage, it wasn't like just gone. 90% of it was gone there and then. And then he said, "Oh, don't worry about the rest. It'll go away in the next day or two." And before I could even say thank you, I was so shocked. The guy turned around and he started digging, cutting the roses or whatever the fuck he was doing. And I couldn't even thank him. I said, "Well, thank you." And he just like kind of fucking ignored me, And this guy was super Catholic. He was super religious, super observant. And, he worked for a guy who was an evil piece of shit. And my brother said, maybe that's just how it works. Where you've got great evil somewhere in the background, there is great good hiding. And it's true. It is true. So, I don't know, but that could also be a little a thought on that. Stalin was definitely one of the most evil men that ever lived. He killed millions and millions of people, destroyed families and so on. A very interesting article. It's worth reading. And yet his daughter became a Catholic. There's some kind of God's handprint on that. Anyway, I've gone on a bit longer than I thought, as usual. So, Alicia, I hope you like the picture of what I think you look like. That's going up as the thumbnail. Bears, Immortals, all of you guys, you've been asking some decent questions. If I forget or skip over stuff, sometimes don't hold me to it. I'm only one guy. And I generally forget people's names. I'm horrible with names. I don't forget faces, but names I'm not good at. So if there's any specific thing you want me to talk about, let me know. I've covered quite a few here, but okay, I hope it was interesting anyway. Good night.